What's causing all this? Woo!
Put Scooter on the phone, you bird brain.
What do you do, backflips? You jump up there in a silly suit? What do you do?
You go BAM! I want you to play that.
All right, we ready to go? All right, we are ready to go. Hey, good afternoon, everybody. 3 o'clock and time to rock. Fast Freddie here in the Youngstown studio in downtown Youngstown. And by popular demand, by your popular demand, we got another great guest this afternoon, the one and only Thomas John. TJ, good to see you, man.
It is good to be here. This place is so laid out. And I walked in and saw Joe, and of course, who else would have put this together? This is just, it's like a playhouse.
Yeah, so since we started this podcast back in August, we've had Frank Sesich on, and we've had Patsy from Left End, and some other Steve Acker from Law, and all these other guys, and everybody's saying, wow, when are you getting TJ on, man? I said, he's the first one I had on. He was first on my list, but we had a little mix up in communications and stuff. But man, it's so good to see you. And of course, today we want to talk about WSRD, the Wizard, and all sort of, how you got here, just every single thing. Right now, I got one of the most famous radio IDs, especially if you were growing up at this time. This is a classic. And it rings through everybody's brains. If you were around at this time when this was big and you were a rocker, it's still in your mind. So here we go. Is that playing, Mario?
WSRD, Youngstown, Ohio.
See, that's the thing about this.
The Wizard.
It's all, we just laid back.
The 50,000 watt rock giant. WSRD, Youngstown, Ohio. The Wizard.
And there it is, the Close Encounters theme. Now, how did you guys come up with the Close Encounters theme?
You know what? I had absolutely nothing to do with that one. That was Jerry. And I don't remember. We had Abrams. Abrams was our initial consultant.
Uh-huh.
And he might have brought that from somewhere else, because it wasn't, the rest, like the Wizard and the look of the Wizard and that stuff I remember. I don't remember on that. So I think it must have been
just something stock.
Lee Abrams brought that and said, here it is. And we all said, yeah.
It just caught on. So where did you guys come up with the name, the Wizard?
Well, actually, the Wizard came first because we originally wanted to be WZRD.
Oh, okay.
And there already was a WZRD. And now, in retrospect, it doesn't seem so bizarre that it's WSRD, but it always was. It never made any sense. It should have been WZRD. And the coolest part was Helton. Was it Doug Helton? I forget where I parked, so I may forget some things.
Right, that's okay. Yeah, it's been a while. You've been to a lot of bars. I mean, when we cover Eddie and JoJos and the Jambar and the Blue Light and the Tomorrow Club, and I mean, if you didn't numb a few brain cells at Eddie and JoJos alone,
exactly.
But the same guy that designed the Buzzard designed the Wizard.
Same guy that designed the Buzzard. So we had him down, and we were at the Uptown in that restaurant, the Mansion. We were there having lunch. And he's got a pad. He's sitting there with a notepad, and he's just drawing. And he's looking at me, and he's looking at Jerry, and he's just drawing. And we have no idea what he's doing, why he's doing it. And we're explaining to him, that we want him just something that there can be a character, kind of like the Buzzard was. And after about 10 minutes, he turned it around and he just pushed it across the table, and it was like. It was Jerry's thin face, Jerry's hair, my ridiculous smile. It was like he had created this guy out of the two people that were sitting there. And from that point on, it was like, oh my God, this is going to be a downhill ride and the weird part that no one notices is on the poster, particularly, there's a little buzzard, little bird, sitting on the
like
table.
A raven or whatever.
Yeah, it's like obviously that was his little hearkening back to the Buzzard, which he'd already done. He kind of had the same face, and there was no other reason for it to be there.
And I like the logo too, because kind of with the Wizard's wand, it almost looked like he was smoking a joint, and the magic was coming off of it and everything. Such a great logo. Yeah. Now, when you guys first got started, it was still country, WRED?
Well, yeah, before we took it over, it was WRED. Mm-hmm. And what had happened was they being HOT, got this FM. We didn't have an FM. I mean, all from the time HOT started as 1330, it was just WHOT 1330. They didn't have an FM. FMJ had an FM. They didn't want it. They had no idea what to do with it. No one was doing anything with them. If we were a university, then you'd have an FM and you'd put classical on there.
Right.
Otherwise, there was no purpose in having the FM. So they let it go. So Fleck picked it up. Bill Fleckenstein was one of the co-owners of HOT. He picked up the FM. And they put it on, it was an AM and FM. They put it red hot. One was WRED, the other was WHOT.
Yeah.
So it was red hot.
Yeah.
So WRED was the country FM. And a guy named Smoochie Causey did the programming for it. He programmed all the music. Didn't have any jocks. Mm-hmm. It was just the music. And I was the continuity director at that point, which means I wrote all the commercials.
Right.
And Jerry and I had formed Tom and Jerry Productions to do, because he was doing all the production. So
yeah.
That way we would go out and do all these fun things. And even if they never got on the air, or we'd do them first, then they'd sell them.
Yeah.
Which is supposed to be the other way around.
Right.
So it got, where was I?
On the, we're talking about, okay, so the red going to.
Right. So it's, anyway, it's WRED. That hasn't happened to me for a while, so this is good.
Hey, this happens all the time on this show.
Test. Is that supposed to do that?
This happens all the time on this show, so you're so right anyway, at home.
It's WRED. I'm the continuity director, and they came into me and said, you know what? This thing needs weathers.
Yeah.
Will you do the weather? Shit, hell yes.
Yeah, I'm on, man.
At the time I wrote myself in commercials just to get on the radio. So, sure, I'll do the weather.
Yeah.
So 3 times an hour, it would break for 30 seconds, and I would do the weather. And 30 seconds is a long time to do the weather.
Right.
So I was throwing in all kinds of crap. Well, I didn't know, but that was my audition for eventually being on the air.
Oh, okay.
So after about 6 months of that, Dick Thompson came in and said, well, we're going to change the country station to rock, and you're going to do afternoons. And I was like, yes. And he said, what do you want your name to be? I mean, just out of the blue. Well, my mother called me Thomas John the whole time I was growing up, so I said, Thomas John. Luckily, I turned out to like it, because it was literally.
Yeah, after you get stuck with it, it's like, oh, man.
Not at all. And that was it. We put it together, and it was, people forget that we didn't have a morning show.
Right,
I mean, back at that time especially, it was like, well, shit, you can't become a radio station if you don't have a morning show. So go ahead, play. But you can't have ratings without a morning show. Well, we did. But the morning show was AC.
Yeah.
And the morning on HOT.
And how about 50 years later, AC is still going? You got to give that guy a tip and a hat.
Top 40 radio.
It's amazing what AC has done.
It's unbelievable, and he still sounds like a top 40 jock should sound. It's
right.
I'd like to think that he just stayed an adolescent forever.
I think so. It's amazing what that guy has pulled off. But did that bother you guys though? I mean,
not really. It was annoying. But on the other hand, we didn't think of it as they didn't give us the morning show. We thought of it as they gave us everything else.
Right. Okay.
And no one said you can't do this, you can't do that. No one. It was Jerry was the program director for it, and we did. We had already been doing Tom and Jerry Productions. We worked together all the time, so we would just bounce stuff off each other. And when something came up, whoever had the idea, you'd forget 10 minutes later who it was. It would just become something.
Boy, that is one of the things that I miss, is that interchange of ideas and just sitting there and brainstorming and just coming up with something, or the 10 wild ideas that it takes to get to that one. I mean, that to me was always a blast, that creative element. Now, what about the music? Now, was that, did you guys have a consultant? Were you pretty free form?
Well, I said we had Lee Abrams to start. So that was the base of it. Yeah. And people probably aren't really aware of record guys. Record guys were it back then. They would show up a couple times a month. Yep. And they would come in with their leather case with the albums in it, and they would sit down with Dick Thompson for the top 40 and then Jerry for the FM. And say, okay, this is the greatest record ever.
You always like the record weasel head bob to every song, because they were like really into it. It's like they're watching these guys live in concert. Hey, here it comes now. Here it comes. Listen.
It was great, because like anything else, you got to know the guys. Right. So you knew who was just bobbing his head because it was time to bob his head. And some of these guys would actually come in and say, you know what? I got nothing this week. What's new? And the others didn't matter what they had. It was the greatest song since Hey Jude. And they were going to play it, and you needed to play it.
Hey, this thing's going off the charts in Poughkeepsie right now. Number one requested song in Poughkeepsie and Reading, Pennsylvania. Wheeling, they're really loving this thing.
Unbelievable. And then you had the few guys who would you knew, and the great thing about those guys is when they come in and say, hey, I got one, forget about it. It was on the air.
Yeah.
And, that's how the music got put together. It's really fascinating how it was put together technically, because we had categories, which all radio stations have categories, but we had, in essence, really boiling it down to the simplest terms, we had the oldies, which was the stuff that were carryovers from the top 40 days.
I mean, some
All
Beatles,
Right Now by Free, a little bit of Beatles, stuff,
some Stones,
going
like
in
that.
maybe into 71, 72, a lot of Stones, Doors, that stuff.
Right.
And then you'd have the stuff that was just 2 years ago.
Right.
That was another category.
Yeah.
And then the category from the last 6 months. And then you had the new ones. Well, they were all on different reels, big reels, the big 12-inch reels. And we had a bank of reel-to-reel machines. So you would put category A, category B, category C, and then what used to call cart machines.
Yeah.
It used to be you could always explain cart machines to people by saying, it's like an 8-track.
Yeah,
now no one knows what an 8-track is either. It was a thing. It was about this big and it had tape in it and it had one thing on it.
Right.
And you would put it in the machine and everything was based on tones.
Yeah.
That you couldn't hear. Dogs could hear, I suppose, but people couldn't hear them. So the tones would run the radio station. So the way it would work is reel A would start. It would when it got to the end of the song, it would play a tone. It would automatically start reel B. Yeah. Which would then start reel C, would then go back to A. And some of them were played more heavily than others. So that's the way they did it. And then 4 times an hour, it would go to a cart. Yeah. Which was us with the brand new songs. Yeah. So that's why you heard us. I mean, people will still on the Wizard Facebook page and stuff, people will still say, I remember you saying, and here's Rush on WSRD. Well, the reason was you couldn't say anything imaginative because it was going to run as long as that was a hit. Until it moved off the cart and went onto the reel. It was going to be the same every time. Yeah. So if you did anything remotely imaginative, everybody would realize, wait a minute, he said that 2 days ago, and he's saying it again. So in a weird way, it wound up working because it was so spare, and it was a part of the fact was we really, really, really were. The music was the most important part. Absolutely.
Definitely. And
there was no question.
I think that was one of the things that I think people really fell in love with the Wizard because you played such a wide variety of music. And I mean, even like everything from like the softer stuff, Jimmy Buffett, and you guys played like Pirate Looks at 40 and things like that. And then deep tracks and up and coming bands and a lot of Southern rock. You went deep on that, and you'd get the Loggins and Messina in there, and it was just such a good mix of music that it really had an awesome variety.
And you couldn't do it was like going back to the top 40 days when you could play Louis Armstrong and then Satisfaction. or something stupid, Frank Sinatra, and then the Doors.
We talk about that all the time when we get the with the old schoolers in. We always talk about that because that's how it would be. You would get Elvis, El Martino or Tony Bennett still might have a song in the top 40, and then here comes Led Zeppelin or something. Absolutely. A lot of those guys that were at the end and in that transition period, they would still play.
Lazy, Hazy, Crazy Days of Summer. Nat King Cole was on at the same time as the Rolling Stones because they were both 1965.
And that was crazy because we dug it all. Everybody back there dug it all, Yep. It was just like, oh, okay. You just took it, Captain and Tennille, and then Joe Cocker, Cry Me a River or something.
So anyway, obviously we understand the concept. It was kind of the same thing on the Wizard in those days. You could get away with playing Dan Fogelberg and then Black Sabbath. Right. You could do it. There was no question. Yeah. And, in a way it's bizarre, but in a way it created a whole raft of people who loved Dan Fogelberg and Black Sabbath.
Oh, yeah.
and I'm one of them. I realized they could not be more fundamentally different.
Oh, yeah.
But it was what it was.
But you know what? I think today, in some ways, it's getting back to that with the younger people, is that you're finding that they're making their playlist, and they got some rap on there, they got some country on there, then they'll have Queen and the Beatles and the Stones and the Doors, and then whoever else is out there, maybe Nickelback or some of this. And I think it's because there's no more albums. So what they do is it's almost like getting back to the top 40 days when we would buy 45s. You were just buying one song. I didn't really start getting into albums until when the Beatles weren't the top band on Melody Maker or whatever anymore, and Led Zeppelin took over, and then they made that big transition, and then everybody started transitioning from, you know, the Beatles and stuff like that to songs that were deeper and lyrics that were deeper and music that was heavier, and that was you know, so at that transition, I think that's when I really started getting away from 45s. But I mean, I had the Stones and the Beatles and Santana and Bob Dylan, but I had, you know, tons of records everywhere. Now, were you always a big music fan growing up? Is that what got you into radio?
Yes. It was, well, my dad was a huge music fan. My dad was a huge Sinatra fan, Nat King Cole. It's still my 5 favorite artists include Bob Dylan, Black Sabbath, and Nat King Cole. I mean, you know, so I've always loved it. And then, you know, the early days, what were my early days, were not like, it's ironic because eventually I started doing the doo-wop show, did that for 23 years. And that was all music I've never really listened to at that time. When I was 8, 9, 10 years old, I didn't listen to that stuff. It wasn't until really when the Beatles started, when I was 12, that then I was all in. That was it. I was all in. And there was a station in Cleveland that used to play it was the Beatle hour every night for a while. And then they finally changed it to the British hour because they was playing the same 10 Beatles songs. Right. But that was an hour every night, never missed it. Every night you hear the 10 top Beatles songs, which, and aside, you know, it's weird if you think about it. The Beatles, I mean, no one denies that they were the most significant band in history. They've got certainly some of the best music. You never hear it. I mean, did people just get so satiated with the Beatles that it's part of your DNA and you don't have to hear it anymore? Right. But I mean, when BBG was the oldie station, a few Beatles songs. There was never. I mean, you would think the Beatles would be something that would be everywhere. Somebody, somewhere would play it. Yeah. No one does. But I know, anyway. It's amazing. 60 years now. Could you believe the Beatles are 60 years old? Yeah, exactly. And the music still sounds as good as is today. And the thing that I think, and we talk about this a lot on the show too, because, you know, everybody has been influenced by the Beatles. Any person that has come up here that is our age and sat down, okay, when did you start playing guitar? When the Beatles, I saw the Beatles, I heard the Beatles, I wanted to be the Beatles. Everybody wanted to be the Beatles. Everybody in the world. This is just not, you know, this is everybody in the world. And then when you stop and think about it, everything that they did in like 6 years, you know, how do you jam all that in the 6 years? It's mind-boggling. You know, I mean, not only did they manage to change musical styles completely, arguably twice, and maintain exactly the same quality, and nobody ever said, well, hell with the Beatles. Nobody ever dumped them because they did something. And now you make one record that's a little too hard or too soft. Yeah. And it's like the end of the world. That never happened. Plus, they managed to make 2 of the best rock movies ever made that still stand up to this day. I mean, A Hard Day's Night and Help in totally different ways. Right. Were stunningly good movies. And they, as you say, they did that all in 6 years. And all of a sudden in 72, they're like, no, well, we quit. And then when they broke up, then we had 4 times the Beatles music because everybody took off. Then George Harrison took off. Then you had Wings, and you had Paul McCartney and Ringo and George. I was listening to an old tape from like some top 40 station, probably from like maybe 74, 75, when all these guys, and on that thing, there was 4 Beatles artists in this hour of music, you know? Separately. 4 separately, and every song was just as good. And when you think about it, I don't think there's a single band out there that where all 4 members went on to huge careers. Every member in the band went on to huge careers. No question. You know, Crosby, Stills, and Nash, kind of, but they started that way. They were stars before they came in. Right. That's a whole different thing. Yeah. Coming out of nowhere and popping up, and then every one of you go off in different musical directions, and you're all stars. Nothing. You know, as a matter of fact, I think today is George Harrison's birthday, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. That's cool. Oh yeah. But I've been watching. It's weird. I've been watching the Traveling Wilburys video. Because I got an MP3 player that I use when I walk in the woods. It's got 196 of my favorite songs. And the Traveling Wilburys is one of them. And I'm listening to that thing and I'm thinking, okay, that's Jeff Lynne, and that's George Harrison, and that's Tom Petty. Which one's Dylan? Tom Petty sounds exactly like Dylan. So just for those of you who may be having that same question, I went on YouTube and watched. Dylan never takes a verse in that song. Petty takes all of them except Jeff Lynne, and then George. And there's George Harrison, and you look at these guys in this room, and where Orbison was dead, they have his guitar in the rocking chair there, going back and forth. You think, How the hell could that have ever existed? I mean, Asia pales compared to the traveling Wilburys.
Oh, and you know, and imagine that. These guys are sitting around and George wants to get some friends together to start a band. Who am I going to call? I'll call Tom Petty. I'll call Dylan, see what they're doing.
What I read not long ago was, I think it was Tom, they wanted Tom Petty, and Tom Petty said, you know what, I've got Dylan's guitar, he left it here. Let's take it over to his house, or the other way around. Whatever it was.
Right, yeah.
When it started out, one of them wasn't even in the initial A group. And when they brought his guitar, he said, well, wait a minute.
I'll be in your band. You guys got a band, I'm in.
What a stunning group of people.
Oh, it's such amazing music. It just sounds so good. Hey, let's see who's checking in here this afternoon real quick. Our buddy Dave Price is checking in. Jack McCann, Jimmy Elger checking in. Jay Bird, Renee Mass. How you doing, Renee? Let's see here. Ken Marquette, Jay Bird, Rick DeVanzo, Debbie Bacheri. Hi, Debbie. How are you? My buddy Stubby's checking in. Richard Clay's on. Denny Roth. Of course, Mark Hackett is checking in.
Since you brought it up, I took Mark Hackett. I'm cleaning my basement finally after 45 years, and I found a box with the Wizard memorabilia would freak you out. And some of it I was going to throw out, and I thought, no. Because Mark started the WSRD
fan
Facebook page.
Yeah.
So I just met him and his son about a week ago, and I gave him this huge box of it's got all the original acetates for the Wizard logo and the T-shirts and all that. So apparently he's going to start running contests on the webpage and give that stuff away. So if you haven't yet, go to Facebook, and it's called We Remember WSRD, and Mark Hackett's there, and he's going to be giving away that stuff.
Oh, man, we'll have to check that out. Hey, our buddy Charlie Wiener is checking in. Always good to see Charlie and hear from Charlie. Charlie's a good guy. I know he's been kind of strapped from the pandemic, as everybody has been.
Oh, my God.
He's all over Facebook. I see Charlie on there all the time. Jan Kessler checking in.
Yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
Yesterday.
Oh, there's something cosmic in the air, man.
Me out.
There's something cosmic in the air. So, first song played on The Wizard.
Video Killed the Radio Star.
That was the first one.
By the Buggles.
Just like MTV.
No. Wait a minute. That's the other way around.
Yeah.
Because we ended with the Beatles. First song was, damn it, do I know?
I hope so.
Because the last one was American Pie.
The day the music died. We'll have to ask Mark Hackett.
What was the first song on The Wizard? Jerry would be the one that would know. Ha!
Okay.
I don't know that I ever knew.
Oh, geez. Okay. What's Dr. Jerry doing these days? You know, he always seemed to be kind of like a reclusive kind of cat. Is that safe to say?
In ways he was, but on the other hand, Hotchkiss from this radio station from Hubbard, he would see Jerry at that bar in Hubbard every Monday night for like years after everybody else stopped seeing him. So he was going out.
Yeah.
And he health-wise, he was not too good when we did the rock and roll history or rock and roll awards.
Oh, right.
He was there.
Yeah.
But I've seen him a couple times since then. He's doing great. And I was just talking to Justine before this, and she saw him a couple weeks ago at Stanbaugh for something, and she said he was with Bonnie and he was doing really good.
Oh, that's cool, because he's kind of like a mysterious character, because he was like laid back, low key type guy, you know. Well,
you know, the thing with Jerry is he had perfected the big brother attitude, where he would never say anything good. Never. And you knew he loved you, but he would never. It was always, and that extended to the bands too. I mean, I remember vividly being at practice sessions and recording sessions with Left End, because in fact he produced some of their stuff.
Yeah.
And I would cringe at the things he would say to them, and they would just take it in stride. They just move along, because that was Jerry. That's just the way he approached it. It was, and years later, I realized that's what he was. He was the big brother.
Right.
He was never going to give you credit for whatever you did. It didn't matter.
Yeah.
But you knew, as soon as it turned around, if anybody said anything bad about you, he'd be the guy that would be there to defend.
Right.
That's Jerry Starr to it.
Well, we might as well talk a little bit about Left End. There's certain subjects we always got to cover on this show with the old schoolers, and of course, one is Left End. What are your memories of Left End? Your dealings with them, Dennis T. Menace, shows, memorable shows. Just tell me a little bit about that, because you guys were right there from just about day one.
And I was a little more so, because I had just moved here. I moved directly from Canton, where I was from. I got the job. I was still a junior in college, and all the guys ahead of me, the seniors in my fraternity that I knew, had all gotten out. None of them gotten jobs in radio. They were all selling shoes. And I got a chance to take this radio job, but I had to quit school to do it.
Yeah.
So I left.
You turned pro like I did.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I left and came here. I knew nobody. Well, the sales manager at this radio station owned what used to be called The Apartment,
right,
which was over on Midlothian. So you can imagine.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you talk about living there. I mean, I didn't need a real apartment.
Right.
I lived there because I didn't know anybody else. I lived there. Jimmy Pantelis was running at the time, and Left End was, in essence, the house band.
Yeah.
So from day one, I was there for the music. And, you know, as it went along, I'm writing commercials about them and for them. And the music is just keeps coming out and it keeps getting better. And it's like, well, Sunshine Girl was really good. Bad Talking Lady, wait a minute. You know, and so we got a chance to be involved, not nearly the way Jerry did. If you can get Jerry on this show sometime, you need to do it, even if you have to call him at home.
Right.
Because as I say, Jerry produced some of their demos and was actually right there with the music.
Yeah.
But, you know, I was kind of there as a hanger-on. Well, the best hanger-on story is, came time for Left End to make the leap from Youngstown to Cleveland. They hadn't played Cleveland yet.
Yeah.
So they decide the way they're going to do it is they're going to run ads. They were playing, I don't remember what the name of the bar was, but a good-sized bar. Not as big as like the Agora.
Right.
Like
the one step below, right.
So they're playing this bar, and they run all these ads during the week leading up. You know, Left End doesn't care if you show up or not, but if you'd like to, here's the, you know, the point was they were going to be the badasses of rock and roll. So they got a gorilla costume. Now we're not talking about a Benny Hill gorilla costume. Yeah. This was a really aces gorilla costume. In fact, I got to borrow it and go to the top of the stairs of my wife's house. We weren't married yet. And her father, the minister, let me in and let me go up and sit at the top of the stairs in this gorilla costume for when she came home from work. It's amazing she didn't just drop right over right there. But anyway, so the point is, you got to realize this is a really good gorilla costume. Yeah. So I'm in the backstage behind this stage in this bar, and I'm in this gorilla costume. And there's a rope, probably 2 inches around, big twine rope thing, and it stretches from back there. I've got it tied to a chair, and it comes around and comes up stage, and it's hanging on the mic stand. So Left End begins their set, and I mean, I'm sorry, they were just the most professional, you know, and that's the stunning thing about Dennis was Dennis could be so edgy and so irritating on stage, and the second you got him backstage, you would not, and I did it, be afraid to take your mom back to introduce her. And so Dennis is on stage, and he's doing, and he keeps grabbing this rope and just tugging on it, and it's tied to a chair, so it's not moving. Yeah. And he keeps telling people, "You idiots! You guys paid all this money," and it was this big box of money. "You paid all this money to get in, you idiots!" And then they go into the next song. So they go through this whole thing. And the crowd, some of them are getting it, most of them, you know, some of them I suppose are pissed off, and most of them are getting it. They realize where this is going. So, but they don't know what this rope is. So finally it gets to the last song. And I take the rope off the chair and I tie it around my neck. And Dennis pulls on the rope, and here I come around the outside doing, you know, my best gorilla. And I get to him, and I hit him, and he goes down. And now I'm hovering over him, beating him, and he's got the mic, and he's, you know, Dennis, he's dying. He doesn't want to laugh, but I can see in his eyes, he's going, more. So finally, he's prostrate on the ground. It's over. He's not. It's done. He can't get up anymore. The crowd is going crazy. This huge box of money is sitting there on the. Well, I'm supposed to pick up this box of money and throw all this money back out to the crowd. Yeah. Well, what no one had thought about was I had these damn gloves on. Okay. They have no fingers. Yeah. So I get up and I'm holding the box, and I'm panicking because we had practiced everything else except how the hell am I going to get this money out of this box and throw it on the crowd? So I try, and it falls out of my hands, drops to the ground. And this fat girl grabs the box and takes off into the street, and she disappears on Euclid Avenue. And that was it. It was like $400.
Oh, man.
Which spread out among 200 people was going to be great. Oh, yeah, $2 apiece. The $2 that they got, they'll put it on their Left End album. It'll be the greatest story ever. Well, no. This girl has it, and she's gone. And I'm like mortified. And Dennis is still laughing. Now it's funnier than ever. So that was
that is an awesome story.
And you know, the funny part of it is I don't remember any repercussions because the guy who was their manager at that time was pretty down the line. And I don't even remember him yelling at me. I think he realized that he had forgotten about the gloves.
Right. Yeah, that's one of those things. What are you going to do at that point in time?
Yeah. You know? And the addendum to that story is a few years later, not the same gorilla costume, but a similar gorilla costume we had at, for some reason, I don't remember why we had it, but we went to one of the station softball games. And one of the guys from the station was wearing the gorilla costume, and he's walking through the stands, and I'm playing third base. And everything's funny. All of a sudden I look and here this idiot lady hands her infant to this gorilla. And now I'm having flashbacks to trying to get the money out of the box. So I throw my glove on the ground, take off from third base, get over there. I'd like to say I dove under and caught it, but actually I dove over there. I said, okay, let him down. That's the baby down. And I take the baby and give it to this lady. No, she had no idea the risk she had taken with this infant. Anyway, so much for gloves.
Oh, that's too much.
So that was a great.
And then, of course, you guys, getting back to the radio station, you guys had a lot of cool features that people still talk about today. The 4 o'clock high, the midnight album. I remember when you play albums in its entirety, and we would all be sitting there with our cassette players, holding the radio up to the microphone of a cassette player and record those and have a whole collection of those instead of buying albums, you know. Or at the end of the year, remember you do all the albums in its entirety. And
go out and buy cassettes; they're a lot cheaper than albums.
You just sit there and the sound quality wasn't all that great, but we had the albums and it didn't even matter.
Yeah, it was. Well, again, it goes back to the main crux of it. I mean, we really were all about the music. I mean, that's why we were in it. That's what we were doing. Whatever talking we did, it might have drifted off on occasion, but in the end, it always would come back to the music.
Right.
It was always, and that's why the 4 o'clock high was such an, I remember vividly.
Yeah, how'd you come up with that? Is that your idea?
Everybody thinks it's because of getting high.
Yeah.
Well, that was a nice secondary thing.
Right.
But really what happened was I was watching 12 o'clock high, the old TV show, the World War II show, and then I went out and mowed my lawn. And I'm in lawnmower up and down and up and down. I'm thinking, you know what? I'll bet I could do a show. What if I did a show that was just like a greatest hits album every day?
Yeah.
It was like bands that don't have greatest hits albums. I'll make their greatest hits album and we'll put it in a half hour and we'll call it, oh shit, the 4 o'clock high. It's like the 12 o'clock high. Oh my God, this is going to be. And I went in, and again, they pretty much let us do what we wanted to do. Went in and ran it down to the boss, and he said, we'll go, go for it. See how it goes. And I mean, from day one, it was just, and it started out, it was always, usually it was tied to somebody's album release. Because back then, you'd get at least 2 significant albums every week put out by somebody.
Yes.
So you'd take that album, you'd add one cut, and you'd take their previous 26 minutes of everything they'd done, and that's what you did. And then that's back when we had a lot more, unfortunately, the last year we don't have any at all, but a lot more concerts. And so if somebody was playing at the Blossom tonight, well, here you go, 4 o'clock, you're going to be driving up.
That was always great.
Play this for a half hour.
That was always great, man. Everybody would be cranking that up. And, we just lived in such a great time, with music. And that's one of the things that's like a common thread or a common thing that flows through the show as we talk about that. And not to lament about the good old days or sound like old farts, even though we are but it's like, it was such a great time. I mean, I don't think you'll ever see a time like that again. And the music was so good and everybody was just on the same page with it. I always say that Youngstown, Ohio has a high music IQ. There are some cities that have higher music IQs than other cities. And in Youngstown, with the Wizard and then with all the influence from Cleveland and the Buzzard and all the shows that would come into there
and the Wolf
and the Wolf. And you guys would have to keep up with what they were doing too. If all of a sudden Genesis breaks and all of a sudden it's like, man, you got to be right there, or so you guys were always right there with the music. But it was just all this new music was coming out at that time, and we were just soaking it up in Youngstown. We're going even back to the teen dances when they would have teen dances, and all these bands were playing there, and then the YMCA across the street here used to be packed with teen dances, and every Catholic church, CYO, they all had it. And you're talking going way back now. Guys like Joe Walsh were playing there, the James Gang, the Raspberries, they're playing, and everybody was just soaking this stuff up. And then, of course, with you guys with Hot Day. Now, the Wizard was still on during Hot Day, right? you guys were still
tail end of Hot Day. Yeah, because I was actually, after the Wizard ended, I started doing middays on HOT AM.
Right.
And I was doing that show when Idora Park burned.
Oh, no kidding.
So that was after the Wizard. So yeah, the Wizard years were also spring thing years. And you know, the great thing, I just saw this on Facebook the other day. I don't know what brought it up, but somebody was, I know what it was Pat Palumbo's book. Somebody was talking about that, and they said, yeah, Left End, you know, the Eagles opened for them once? And that's absolutely true. It was a spring thing, and there were 22 bands, and Pacific Gas and Electric were the headliners. And the Eagles had to be somewhere else later that day. Yeah. They played at like 10 in the morning. So the Eagles, who only had Take It Easy at the time, but they're playing. So, and I'll never forget, afterwards, they were in the little room we had. It was actually under the roller coaster. They were in that little cabin. And we went back to thank them. Yeah. And it was me and Jerry and Dick Thompson. And we walked in, and they said, oh, thank you for the opportunity. But you know what? We're not going to be playing these kind of places for very long. And, you know, they turned around, and we all looked at each other. Yeah, right. Yeah. And they were right. But they literally opened for, well, everybody. They opened for Menagerie, Coconut, Left Hand. Everybody was on that to get 22 bands in there. And so they can all say that the Eagles opened for them. Right, right. But, you know, I see the flip side of that. And I realizing that we are like older than dirt and probably wouldn't know it if there were. But when I was living at the apartment, that was one of 12 bars that had bands every night. Now, I don't know that there's any bar that has a band every night. No, and especially with the pandemic. But even before that, you know, you get a band on Saturday, you get a band on Friday. But people don't realize the good money these guys were making. Left End, Coconut, all these bands that they were playing 5-6 nights a week, and every place was packed. And these guys, there was a time in Youngstown, Ohio, that you could make a very good living playing in a rock band, being a full-time musician. And I don't think you'll see those days anymore. I don't see how they even get started. I mean, how do you even get a band started if you can only play once a week? I know. And you just, you know, and now on the other hand, now it's all the young people are saying, you idiot, it's YouTube. Yeah. Okay, right. So you can be Justin Bieber and you don't have to leave your house and you end up making $100 billion. So okay, we were wrong. Yep. But yeah, those were crazy days, man. And I think that's why I always talk about, though, the Youngstown music IQ is a lot higher than a lot of other people, you know. And then, of course, you know, another topic we got to talk about is the Tomorrow Club. Now, you were involved at the Tomorrow Club for many years. What are some of your memories, and who'd you see there? Memorable assholes, you know, everybody in between, nice people, dicks, you know. You know, it's funny because I somehow managed to miss. Because when it first started, it was Jerry all the time. Jerry, as he should have. Jerry did every Sunday night. Yeah. And then he got tired of it, and he started doing a place right up on the corner here, right up the street here. What was it? Oh, Arcade. The Arcade, and what was it on the play? It was on Fifth Avenue. What was that? Oh, yeah. Anyway, he started doing that and the Arcade. So he said, "You go ahead, you take the Agora." It was still the Tomorrow Club at that point. Yeah. And I ended up doing Rush, John Cougar, Sting. Sting was probably the biggest star, actually, that I did. Pat Benatar, we had the same birthday. Oh, yeah? And she played there on her birthday. I was there for that one. And it was also the same day that she was on the cover of Rolling Stone. And what was that? I think October 19th, January 10th. What was it? January 10th. January 10th. And January 10th. So I went down to the locker room to meet her, and it was our birthday. And I had the cover of the Rolling Stone, so she autographed for me. But anyway, you know, that, for whatever reason, the Southern rock bands, I just loved them all. And they were just the coolest guys. And to this day, this is really weird because I got a text from my sister in Florida 2 days ago. She said, I'm just remembering, she lived with us for a while when she went to YSU. I'm just remembering one day when I was at your house for dinner and Henry Paul from the Outlaws called you on the phone. And he did. Outlaws played there one time. And the manager came to me and said, you know what, I don't want you to do the introduction because I've got some important things I need to say. Yeah. It's okay. So he went out there and said, ladies and gentlemen, the Outlaws. And I was just like, what? And then it turned out he went to Pittsburgh and pulled the same thing in Pittsburgh. When he did it in Pittsburgh, the guy went to because he was a big deal. I wasn't a big deal. They went to the band. So the band fired him. So Henry called me to apologize.
How about that?
And from that time on, every time either the Outlaws or Henry Paul were in town, Henry would call me at my house, make sure I was going to MC. So, I mean, how can you not love
I know.
the Southern rock bands? And Greg Allman, all those guys, they were fantastic. The Runaways, what snot noses they were.
Were they?
Exactly the way you would expect them to be.
Oh, yeah, they were kind of teenage punk girls, juvenile delinquent type, you know.
And, Pablo Cruz was there when they had the number one album in the country that day. Boy, were they assholes.
Really?
They were just so pissed off that they were playing Youngstown, Ohio with the number one album. And I'm like apologizing. And they're like, by the way, Pablo Cruz, you never had another number one. So, so there was that side of the equation. But Jan and Dean, I remember Jan and Dean played there. And we went downstairs. It was like November. Went downstairs and they were all huddled around this. There was an old stove that was there. They had the stove open, turned up as loud, and they're huddled around this stove. It was only like 50 degrees. Yeah. They were freezing because it was the first show they'd played outside of Southern California. When they were down backstage, and Rick Springfield's there, and I look up, there's Linda Blair. What? And I mean, intellectually, I knew Linda Blair was with Rick Springfield, but not at the Agora. Not in the basement. So that was kind of weird. And Stiv Bators.
Oh, yeah.
I remember another one. A lot of things happened looking up those stairs. I turn around, and here we're just getting mooned. There's this giant ass. I'm like, who's that? And it was Stiv Bators. And, you talk about two peas in a pod. He was just like Dennis. Because once he did that, then he came downstairs and was, hi, my name's Steve. And how are you? And how, you're from Youngstown. Just unbelievable. They just turn it on and off whenever they wanted to.
Yeah, Frank Sessage's book with his days with Stiv, he's got a lot of great stories in there, man. I mean, that guy's had an awesome career too, just traveling the world and meeting the Rolling Stones. In his book, he talks about Stiv meeting the Rolling Stones. I guess they somehow got invited to this roller skating party. I think it might have been like Keith Richards' birthday or somebody's birthday, and they were in New York City, and it was like one of those things, we're going to have a roller skating party. And so I guess, there's the Keith is skating around and stuff or whatever, and Mick's out there on roller skates. And so Stiv being Stiv goes up to him and goes, hey, excuse me, could you tell me where the men's room is? And Mick is like stunned, right? Because who asked Mick Jagger where the bathroom is? Like Mick just kind of pauses and scratches his head. I think it's over there, mate. And then they just skated away.
Yeah, you're right. Frank's got it's ridiculous. You're talking about being around from day one.
Yeah, those were some crazy things there, man. Now, so you were from Canton. You're originally from Canton. Yes. The home of what? Boz Scaggs?
Home of Boz Scaggs.
Joe Vitale?
Joe Vitale, OJ's.
OJ's. Marilyn Manson. Thurman Munson.
Yeah.
Mother Teresa, or not Mother Teresa, Mother Angelica.
How come when they have interviews, they're not saying Thomas John?
I was leading up to that. I was building up to that, man. That's where this was going. This is the first. Okay, we got those guys out of the way.
Yeah, I can guarantee you that's never happened.
Well, today, that's why that's what sets this broadcast and podcast apart from all the rest. This is where you get that kind of recognition that you deserve. Hey, Margie's checking in. Hi, Margie. Keith Sturgeon checking in. How you doing, Keith? I got to get Keith on. He's an excellent artist. Let's see. My buddy Crazy says, what about Orphan Annie's? Orphan Annie's?
Oh, yeah.
And down the street, Cliff Kelly's bar. What was Cliff Kelly's bar? Bonnie and Clyde's. Bonnie and Clyde's. Oh, yeah. That whole Warren strip, too, man. They had some good Lefty and Jim's.
Never different. I worked Bonnie and Clyde's and Orphan Annie's. Uh-huh. In fact, I have a cassette case at home that's got backstage passes on it. One of them is Orphan Annie's. It was a great logo. And that was Left End. I remember that was Left End. I introduced Left End at Orphan Annie's.
I remember, you're talking about Henry Paul and the Outlaws. And, of course, we'll get into Eddie Panuti and Eddie and JoJo's after this one. But I'll tell you, the one show that they did, they played the the Palms out of Conneaut. Like this was like recently. Well, to me, recently could be 10 years ago. Yeah. Okay, yeah, somewhere within the last 10 years. So I think it's in the last 5. And I'll tell you what, it was one of the best shows I ever seen them put on because we were in this small bar. And they were playing, it was like one of those things out of a movie. Hot, sweaty, everybody was jammed in there, and they were just on fire. And then once they start breaking out that 3 guitar, and the one guy, I mean, he was down. He said he hadn't gotten in a split like that in years. And I'll tell you what, they were so good. And Henry Paul is just such a great guy. But I'll tell you what, they should have recorded that for a live album. It was that good. It was like, whoa, man.
And in fact, I'm surprised you didn't go that night. It must have been a reason. Remember when you and I were doing the 4 o'clock high on the Wolf, and Henry came in. And he did the intro, and we talked about, because they were playing Eddie and JoJos again. It was Night Tracks.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
But they were playing Eddie and JoJos, and I got to introduce them. I introduced them 35 years apart in the same little building. But as you say, you get that energy in that tiny little room, and you get those 3 guys side by side.
Oh, yeah.
It's like adrenaline is coming out of your pores.
Green grass and
oh my God,
forever.
It was just, and it's funny because back to my MP3 player, I also have Hurry Sundown on that, and it played yesterday, and I was thinking, you know what, that was it. That was, if I had to pick one concert experience that I could have again and again and again, that would be it. Because I love that music anyway, and literally I was sitting from here to there.
Oh yeah.
From the stage, and there wasn't much beyond me. It didn't go back that much further, and it's just all right there on stage. And
I remember that's a song I always used to like on the Wizard. You guys always used to play "Freeborn Man" by them. Yep. That was like a staple. And you guys got into Rossington Collins and some of those bands, and
he had one of my classic lines when you and I were doing the thing, and he came in and I said, "Ladies and gentlemen," and told I wasn't Black Hawk. He was Black Hawk for a while. Yeah. And then the Henry Paul band. And ladies and gentlemen, here's Henry Paul. And Henry said, "Well, what's left of him?"
I remember that.
That just knocked me out right from the get-go.
Let's see. Did I say Margie said hi?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Margie said hi.
Is that our Margie?
Yeah, our Margie. And Ken Marquette said the house that Jack built. Were you around when the house that Jack built?
Well, the house that Jack built, I think, became the apartment.
Yeah.
I think.
Or was it the freak out, or did it start in McKinley Heights or Vienna, and then it moved to McKinley Heights?
It was Jay Pantelis' place. But didn't it burn down?
Yeah.
It burned down right before I came here.
Like bars.
But you're right. The freak out became the apartment. Well, and the apartment eventually burned down too.
Yeah.
In fact, I was still writing commercials for it. And I took the copy for that week and lit the bottom of it and let it burn up about 3 inches, and then we hung it up on the wall between my desk and Star's desk. It stayed there until we left. It stayed there like 9 years.
Oh yeah, that can't go anywhere.
Piece of copy with just the bottom of it burned off. But anyway, in answer to the question, it had gone right before I came here. I came here actually on April 1st, April Fool's Day of 72. So it must have been right before that the house of Jack built went away.
Yeah, now, one of my favorite stories is, because we had talked about this before, is we used to have a rash of bar fires in Youngstown. Bars used to burn down a lot. And then you would always sometimes get involved with the arson investigators, right? This shows you how they're thinking.
Oh, yeah. They'd call and say, did they run spots this week? Did they pay for spots this week? Of course, they only had to ask that question once, and then everybody who was going to burn down their bar bought spots that week.
Yeah. We're buying for a whole year.
Extra buy. Yeah. But yeah,
we're booking Rush at this corner bar.
Yeah, I'd get the call. Do you have a copy for this week? Could you Xerox it and send it over? Yeah, sure, no problem.
Yeah, that was for a while there, man. There was like a bar burning down every other day in Youngstown, it seemed like. Yeah. The house that Jack built was in Vienna. It was in Vienna.
That was before me.
Yeah. Okay, so you're from Canton, and you didn't know any Boz Scaggs.
I knew. Secondhand, I knew Marilyn Manson because the group that we hung out with was actually my wife's friends. When I was going back and forth, and I met her best friend there was a guidance counselor, and she had actually been. What was his name? Brian Warner. Brian Warner. She'd actually been Brian Warner's guidance counselor.
Boy, she did a good job, huh?
Yeah, right.
He's in all kinds of trouble with all these crazy sex things, man.
So that was that second hand.
The crazy sex stories with Marilyn Manson these days are just like out there, man.
Then, like, is anyone really surprised?
Yeah, seriously. How do these women, they get involved with
like Bill Cosby, you might be a little surprised.
Yeah. Oh.
Marilyn Manson, I don't think so.
Not at all. Jenna James, he wanted to bite me and set me on fire. Yeah, okay. Now, there had to be some kind of warning signs leading up to that, you would think.
Maybe,
when it gets to the...
maybe you looked at him when he walked in the door. Maybe that would have been the warning sign.
So then you went to Kent State, like I did.
Yep.
And were you there during the shootings? Yeah, because you're a little bit... were you on the campus at that time? Or?
I was right there.
Really?
There was through some weird juxtaposition of things, I found out sophomore year that I had to have a language for telecommunications, which I didn't think I had to have. So now I had to get a language, but I'm already a year behind.
Yeah.
So I thought, what the hell am I going to take? I don't want to take a language. Well, I had taken Spanish in high school. So I thought, well, I'll take Portuguese. They actually teach Portuguese. And sure enough, there's Portuguese. But I was out of sequence because everybody had taken Portuguese 1 the first quarter.
Yeah.
So the teacher... And I told the story the other day, and I realized I should have thanked this guy. The teacher agreed to have the class with just me. I would go to his office every day at noon.
There was nothing funny going on there.
No.
Oh, okay.
And we would, I don't think. He did give me weird drinks when I first came in.
I don't remember anything. He had a poster of Bill Cosby on the wall. But other than that.
And we would speak Portuguese for an hour, and then we'd leave. Well, we're about 10 minutes into it. It's about 10 after 12. His phone rings. This was before cell phones.
Yeah.
Barely before phones. and he answers the phone. He goes, "What? No, we have to vacate?" And I'm like, I'm looking for smoke.
Yeah.
The building's on fire. So he hangs up. He goes, "You're not going to believe this. There have been shootings on campus, and all buildings had to be vacated. I'll see you next week." So I go out. I go downstairs. It was right by where the ROTC building. What started all this was an old ROTC building. It was a frame building. It was old even then.
Yeah.
And they burned it down. Would burn like that because it was all old wood. So that's what started it the previous Friday.
Burnt down like a bar in Youngstown in the early 70s.
Exactly. I just didn't have any copy for it. But so anyway, that's what started the demonstrations.
Yeah.
And then by now we've come to Monday morning. So it's just like still smoking a little bit and pretty surreal. So I get out of class and I run down to right there where a bunch of people were gathered. And this one girl's just freaking out. She's crying and screaming. She's, "No, I saw it. There was blood in there." And I'm like trying to be the mediator. I said, "Relax. I said, there can be a lot of blood and it's really not so bad." Well, it was, and there was. And so we broke up at that point and headed up the hill to where the metal sculpture is. It has the bullet holes in it.
Yeah.
And that's where we were, which was right next to where the guard had turned around and shot down the hill. Now, I don't want to pull on Peter Jennings here and pretend I was in any danger. It was over.
Yeah.
That's where we were.
Or Brian Williams.
Yeah, that's who Brian Williams. I'm sorry, who did I besmirch? Anyway, Brian Williams did that. Anyway, there was no danger, in theory, and that's the thing. But now there are 1,000 of us right by the architecture building on that hill.
Yeah.
And the Jerry Lewis was the guy's name. The communist professors are just, oh man, they're in their glory. They got the megaphones and they're like, "This has been done because the government doesn't." Okay.
Yeah.
Do not, no matter what they tell you, do what they tell you to do. And then, well, in the meantime, something happens. I don't know to this day what it was, but people thought that they were coming back. And everybody took off running across to the other side of the hill. Never ran so fast in my life to this day. You cannot imagine how scared everybody was. And then when you finally got to there and turned around and realized that nobody was coming and everybody kind of started to laugh. And then you looked down through the trees and you could see all the way down to Route 5 and there were tanks coming from the arsenal because the arsenal was right there in Ravenna. And there are tanks, just one tank after another. And you don't think that put the fear of God in you. And there was like, it just... the demonstration part is over. Everybody's just getting the hell out of there. So I was living off campus at the time.
Yeah.
Because the dorms, you got back, you could get your stuff and you were gone. That was it. But I didn't have to do that because I was living in the fraternity house. So I walk back on the way. I get there and there's a phone call, and it's the TV station, which at the time I was doing TV news.
Mm-hmm. TV2.
TV2.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yep.
And Well, everybody was gone. There wasn't anyone left. So they needed someone to anchor the coverage for that afternoon.
Yeah.
Now, keeping in mind, this is dorm only. So it's not like anybody's going to see it, and nobody's in the dorm. So really, nobody was going to see it. But I was
good practice, though.
Yeah, exactly. I was still called. So I start walking back across campus. Well, now it's just deserted, and the cops or the guard are everywhere with their guns, and they look as scared as I look because they weren't that old. They were, and they had. What people forget is they had just come off the streets from a trucker strike, and they had been patrolling the highways and getting shot at. So they were not in any shape to do this in the first place, which was one of the reasons why they probably overreacted. But so I'm just trying to avoid eye contact, walking by these guys with guns, and I finally get to the building, and Milt Pappas, is that his name? The NBC?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, it was Milt Pappas. He was standing outside. He couldn't get in. And at the time, he was a big deal NBC reporter.
Right.
And he calls me over and he goes, "Can you get me in?" I said, "No, sir, I'm sorry." I just turned around, yes! And I walked in, and I go down to the basement, and there was the most memorable part is there was a big whiteboard there, and they had 12 dead, 9 wounded written on the board. And that's what it was at that time. This was like an hour after it started. No one knew anything.
Yeah.
You didn't know anything. And then as the afternoon wore on, I was only like 2 hours. It started changing. It would be 7 dead, 8 wounded, 6 dead, 10 wounded. And finally ended up 4 dead, 13 wounded, and that's where it stayed. But so the director says, "Okay, Tommies, I need you to pad a little bit because we've got a message from President White." He goes, "We're going to go to you." And then he hit this emergency bulletin thing. Well, I thought that was part of the padding.
Yeah.
So he finally comes to me and I goes, "Ladies and gentlemen, let's go to Kent State University President White." And he wasn't ready because apparently he could only do one thing at a time. He did the intro. He couldn't get the other one queued up. He was pissed off at me till like 5 years later because it turned out right after that, he came to KBN and was a director. I don't think he was really, but he would mention it every time I would see him. Because we both then wound up here, and I walked in and he goes, "Oh, there's the guy." So by that time, as I say, it was 4 and 13, and shut it down. There's nobody in the dorms. Dorms are empty. Shut it down. We're going home. So go back to the fraternity house where I don't have to leave because it's a fraternity house. Well, everybody's gone. I think there were like 6 of us. We're still there.
And I'm sure everybody's parents were like, "Get your ass home right now."
God,
It probably wasn't even a question.
No. Oh, God, no. So we had just bought, I was actually the steward, a guy named John Ball from Youngstown, Ohio. He used to live on Garland Avenue. He and I were roommates, and we were stewards, which meant we controlled all the food for the fraternity house, which was fun, and we got free room and board.
Yeah.
So we had just bought food for 26 guys the previous Friday. So we have food for 26 men in this house. There's no one there. There's 6 of us. So we said, "What the hell? What's the point in going home? Where are we going to go at home?" So we stayed there. We watched cartoons. We watched everything imaginable. We had this big cast iron skillet. We would make hamburgers in. Hamburgers the size of small dogs. But we never cleaned it. So when you wanted to have a hamburger, you'd go in and you'd turn on the heat and then go watch a cartoon, and then it would melt all this grease, and then you'd throw the hamburger on the grease, and then we had these deep fried hamburgers. So I did that for like 5 days till we finally had whittled down the food to where it was manageable.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget, I drove home with another one of my fraternity brothers from Minerva, and we drove him home and his girlfriend, who went on to become an anchor in Cleveland, but I do not remember her name. And as we're on our way, they came on the radio with a report on the autopsy reports on the 4 who had died. And she just lost it.
Oh, man.
I mean, and he and I are looking at it, and we're barely on the ragged edge anyway.
Yeah.
But we're just looking at each other and, "No, what do you do? What do you tell?" And I mean, she was as hysterical as you can get. And got them to Minerva and dropped them off. And I went to my house and got a job like 3 days later. It was the longest summer job I ever had because I started like May 6th.
Yeah.
And had it till the following. And then along the way, we had to actually, because there was no, I don't want to say bad things about remote learning, but this remote learning they're trying to do now, there was no such thing as that. So we had to go there to take our finals. So we actually took our finals at the Holiday Inn on 44 in Kent.
Yeah.
We had to go there, and you went into this room, and and you took your test longhand on paper, and turned it in. So that's how we wrapped up that year. And then they started an ad hoc committee on violence. How I got on that committee, I really don't remember, but there weren't very many people on it. It was probably 20 of us, and we used to meet at the golf course outside.
Yeah,
because you still couldn't get on campus for the most part. This was months later. So we would meet at that golf course, and it was a bunch of professors and like 2 or 3 students and administration. And again, I think about it again, what the hell was I doing in that committee? I don't know, but I was. And in the end, I wound up casting the vote that kept grades at Kent State University, because the big push was to go to pass-fail. They wanted everything to be pass-fail. And I remember Vivid saying, guys, I don't even go to class. And I can still get B's.
Right.
I'm sorry. No, culturally, it's too difficult for some people. I said, forget it. So when it came time to vote, I voted against pass-fail.
Well, there's some, I don't know if I'd brag about that. There might be some people out there still pissed at you.
The people that flunked out at
the end. Well, they had the excuse though, but yeah, that was just a terrible time though. I mean, now did you go back the following year, and what was the attitude, and what was it like, or did it calm down after everybody was gone?
It kind of did. But the very first thing I remember, the first event they ever had, and it was stupid. People are just stupid sometimes. The first concert they had was Jefferson Airplane. Why in God's name would you bring Gracie Slick into this tinderbox? That's just, what? But that's what it was. And I used to take any job they could get. I was big on work study. I would just say, give me the money. What do I care? What else am I going to do? I didn't have,
I'm not going to study.
I wasn't with a girl or anything there, and I was in the fraternity. Everything was organized. We knew the rest of the time I was doing nothing. So anyway, one of the jobs I had was as an usher for this Jefferson Starship concert. Yeah. The first concert after May 4th. And what we ended up having to do was go throughout the entire Memorial Auditorium and check under every single seat during the hour before, so no one else could come in, to make sure no one had planted bombs under the seats. That's a surreal, scary situation. You're in this huge building with there's only like 20 of us, and you're going row by row and checking every one of these seats. And then in the end, nothing happened. Yeah,
so she was cool. No, she
was fairly cool. I remember
ran rave. And
at one point she started saying something about, you could come down to the front of the stage. And then she said, but no, we don't want you to do that. And it was like she had to get across the fact that I would do it if I could. Yeah. But they won't let me. Yeah. Because when she said that, everybody just went, ah! But
so she was pretty well behaved.
Yeah, she was, for Gracie's sake. She was.
Yeah. What were some of the other cool concerts you saw at Kent State during your days there?
I remember Mountain and Emerson, Lake and Palmer together was really cool, because I remember at the end of the Emerson, Lake and Palmer, he kicked kicked the organ, and the organ went up on 2 legs, and the guitarist is going crazy, and the organ is making this crazy, and it stayed there for like 10 or 15 seconds, and by now the crowd is completely insane. And finally, when it crashed, you can't imagine, it made this horrendous noise, and the guitar ended, and that was it. Everybody went out into the street happy. Johnny Mathis. I saw Johnny Mathis. They didn't have a lot of good concerts. What we would consider good then. The weird part about that was I had tickets for Paul Butterfield, who was supposed to play at JB's South, which was right there on Water Street, tiny little bar. And Janis Joplin died the day before he was supposed to play. So he was a pallbearer. Oh, okay. Janis, so he didn't play. So I had these 2 tickets. They were like $26 a piece, which that time was really expensive. Oh, yeah. So I had these 2 tickets. I don't remember who I was going to take. Anyway, so I kept going down, and they said, well, bring them down sometime, and well, I never did, and I never did. Well, finally, my buddies were coming from Canton. I said, you know what? I got these tickets. We'll turn them in at JB South, and we'll all go down to JB South, and we'll just drink for free. Yeah. So we go down there, and there's a big sign. The Moody Blues present Trapeze. Trapeze of Medusa fame. Right. They were on the Moody Blues record label. It was Trapeze's first concert in America. Was in JB South. So I give them these, we go in, there's no one there. We go off in the corner, there were like 6 of us, and we're sitting there, and my buddy and I have our backs to and all of a sudden they launch into their first song, And he was a drummer, still is to this. And he just looked at me and I looked at him. We got up and took our chairs and sat right in front of the stage. And they proceeded to play the entire Medusa album live right there for what turned out to be an okay crowd. There were probably 100 people there in the end. But when they started, it was just us. And now, years later, I'm like, did that really happen? Right. So, of course, one guy went on to Deep Purple, Mel Galley, and they all went off, there were only 3 of them. And they went off to different bands. Well, one of them showed up at the Agora with another band. And I went down there to MC and to introduce him. And I told him the story I just told you. I said, now tell me, is that true? And he goes, oh, absolutely. He said, Kent, Ohio was our first gig ever outside of England. And so I have the Trapeze album that says, Kent was our first and you were there.
How wild is that?
So I mean, talk about off the wall. It could have been, it could have been nothing. And the weekend of, actually, one other story like that, my roommate in the fraternity house was a senior and I was a freshman. And he was the activities director. So he wanted to get a band for what was called Spring Thing. We used to have a thing called Spring Thing. It was in the spring. So he said, let's go see Joe Walsh. So we went to Ashland College and Joe Walsh and the James Gang were there. And the opening act was Ides of March.
Okay, with Vehicle.
So obviously we're not going to get Joe Walsh. Yeah. So we go backstage and we're talking to Ides of March. Well, Ides of March then played that Thursday before the Friday where the bars of May 4th. They were there the day before the May 4th thing started. Well, Ides of March was Jim Peterick, who became Survivor.
Right.
So someday I hope to meet him and ask if he remembers where he played on May 3rd.
May 3rd, 1970.
Because that's where he played. We got him we've hired him and we paid him at the end of the night.
And I'm sure they had some kind of memory of
they must. I mean, for that to happen 2 days later, you're not going to.
Now, did you ever run into Joe Walsh around Kent, or did you ever see him, or did you see the Measles or any of those guys?
Yeah, back in the Measles days, I see them all the time.
Yeah.
That wasn't a big deal. I remember one night at JB's again, and I was sitting with a guy, and we're just talking, and I said, "Did you hear Neil Young is in town?" And he goes, "No, Neil Young's not in town." I was all right. What, I make this up? Somebody said Neil Young's in town. And the guy came down and put his hand on my shoulder. He goes, "What would he be doing here?" And it was Neil Young.
Really?
Yeah. And he walked by.
JB's or?
Yeah, it was JB's. Yeah. Uh-huh. And I was like, being too cool at that time to chase after him and ask for his autograph. Yeah. So I didn't get it.
Oh, that had to be pretty wild.
Yeah, that was just like, and then you can imagine, that was the end of the drinking for that night. It was like, you couldn't close your mouth because it was, our job.
Now, was he there to see Joe, or did he jump in, or he just?
We never knew.
Oh, okay.
Never knew why he was supposed to be there. Apparently he was just there.
He just happened to be there.
And this was later than Joe. This was after.
Oh, okay.
James Gang at least.
But like when you see those pictures of Joe, like the Measles playing on a little 2x4 stage, and he's wearing them plaid bell bottoms or something, you saw that kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah. That little bar was a motorcycle shop right by where they played. Uh-huh. And my roommate was a senior. I was a freshman. So I started drinking from the time I showed up there because he was the bartender. So I never really did the 3-2 bars.
Right.
Because I didn't have to. He was at the townhouse, it was called. And I would just go in the townhouse and he would serve me because I was a roommate. So in a way, I thought at the time it was the coolest thing ever. But what it ended up doing was keeping me from seeing all these bands that were playing in the 3-2 bars.
Yeah, right. The Numbers Band was probably still, were they playing at that point in time? And,
that's the Numbers Band and Measles are pretty much the two I remember specifically.
Yeah, the one story that I like that Joe Vitelli wrote about in his book is when Joe Walsh brought Jimmy Page and Robert Plant down to JB's. They played at the Coliseum, and he brought him down, and they actually played there, and they joined him on stage.
Oh, my God.
And as word started getting out, like the whole downtown was just packed with people. And that Joe Bujak that ran the place, he's some old hunky guy. He didn't know who these guys were. He didn't know Jimmy Page and Robert Plant from Adam. And he's trying to book them for like open stage night on Thursdays. And he's giving them the pitch. I'll give you all the drinks. No. But he was dead serious because he had no clue who these guys were. And Joe had brought him down, and they just, and I guess Water Street was just a mob scene after that. And And it was crazy, man. It was crazy from what they say. And then another thing too, I remember both Joe Walsh and Phil Kagi talking about they would jam there like on open jam nights and stuff at these different places where they would come in and just sit there and they're playing Jeff Beck and
I was drinking rum and cokes, so I didn't get to see any of that.
yeah. Now you can drink all the rum and cokes you want,
and now I want to see that.
Yeah,
but at the time I was like, no,
yeah,
have your 3-2 beer.
Yeah. That's what I did though. The first day I went to Kent State, I got a fake ID on the regular ID because I was thinking, this shows you my Youngstown mind because we're standing in line and you had to like fill out a paper and then it puts your birthday down, and then I said, and I saw that they were just processing these things. So my birthday is 12/1. So I put 9/1 and boom, I had a 3-2 ID good to go, man.
Wow.
From day one. With my picture on it.
You got to drink that 3-2 beer.
Yeah. I got the good 3-2 beer.
It's funny because to this day, I never got a taste for beer because
you didn't have to.
I never had to drink it when I was.
And you didn't have to drink Boone's Farm or any of that stuff, man.
No.
You were down there drinking rum and cokes.
No, I did do Boone's Farm though.
Yeah.
Because it was just the opposite in high school. I was the oldest because my birthday's in January. So I was 18 before everybody else. So it wasn't any peer pressure to go out to the bars.
Right.
None of them could go. And I didn't care. So it wasn't until college. And then I skipped 3-2 beer entirely.
Yeah, see, I was always the youngest.
Oh, yeah,
my birthday was in December, and I didn't go to kindergarten. It was like, I don't know, for 1 year they weren't doing kindergarten or my birthday, and they put me in first grade. And so when I graduated, when I went to Kent, I was 17.
Oh, geez.
And I still had all the way till December for my birthday. And that's why when I saw them doing that ID, I went 9/1/57. And I was like, yeah, boy, when I got that official thing, it was like, okay, where are we going? Man, where are we going? But yeah, I'll tell you, when you look at some of the other musical things up there, Elvis Costello played at the Rathskeller in the Student Center, and I remember one of the best concerts I saw there was the Tubes in the gym. That was a good one, and I think somewhere between like me and you, I think Bruce Springsteen played there maybe 73, something like that, and
holy cow.
But there was a lot of people went to Kent State, besides me and you, we put us on the top of the list.
Yeah, that's it.
But like Drew Carey and the guys from Devo, did you ever run into the guys from Devo? They're probably about your age. They're probably in your class.
I didn't, but I knew of them. I did know them.
Devo and Arsenio Hall was like the RA in our dorm for really? 1 year. And he was working over at TV too.
And who's Batman? How come I can't remember Batman?
Oh, yeah, him. Yeah. Batman. Okay.
Mr. Mom.
Yeah, Mr. Mom. Keep going.
Birdman. I can tell you his entire repertoire.
Oh, we're terrible.
Is this a great country or what?
Yeah.
Night Shift. I don't know. What's his name? Oh, God.
Who's Batman, Mr. Mom, and...
Oh, my God. How can we both feel... Oh, people. This is a cautionary tale.
Hey, this is what 40, 50 years in rock radio get you right here.
One of my favorite people. Oh, my God.
Oh, how can we draw a blank like this? All right, somebody in the audience got it. Who is Batman, Mr. Mom?
Oh,
as soon as we see that, we're going to go.
Night Shift.
Oh, and you're Mr. Trivia.
Why? Believe me, that is not lost on me. I mean, there was a time I didn't even take books to me when I went out and did trivia nights, 5 nights a week. Because I knew I could remember. And when we used to do, this is the best, when we used to do the birthday wheel at Campfield Fair, you would spin it and people would yell out their birthdays.
Yeah.
I never had a piece of paper. I would remember them. I would remember all the birthdays that people had called out. And now, literally, I can't remember the name of the guy who was Mr. Mom. And Beetlejuice. I mean, my God.
I know. Hey, Mario, you want to look that up?
Well, Batman? Now it's just a thing. Now
Michael Keaton. There we go.
Jesus.
That's what I was going to say.
Oh, God.
All right. Thanks, Jack McCann. Jumping Jack on the ball today. There you go.
You know, that's scary in a way, but it really is demonstrative in so much, because what happens to us so often.
Uh-huh.
And with no warning.
Uh-huh.
I mean, stuff just crazy. And I mean, how many things have we remembered in detail in the last hour?
Oh, yeah.
It's not that we don't remember things.
But who
it's
is
just
Batman?
all of a sudden you'll bump up against something.
Picking a flicks.
Oh, my God.
You know, geez.
You bump up against something and it's going and it ain't coming. It doesn't matter what you do unless you call. Thanks.
Yeah, okay. Ken Marquette's on there too. Ken Marquette used to be neighbors with Steve Vaders. They lived in Girard.
Oh my God, Michael Keaton.
That's one of my favorite stories. Back in my WNIO country days, we're doing a remote over at the Niles Flea Market, and I'm out there, and this little old couple, looks like my grandmother and grandfather. They come in, and we're talking, and they go, "Hey, do you think if I brought you one of my son's records, you could play it on the radio?" And you know, we'd always get people like that. You know, they had a little hillbilly band or something, and they had this record out or whatever.
Yep.
I'm like, well, we'll see what we could do. So they go out in the car, and she goes, "Well, I don't have an extra, but I'll show it to you." And so she comes in, and it's like Dead Boys, a stack of Dead Boys records and stuff. "Oh yeah, this is my son, and he's in this band here." And it was just like, oh boy.
I swear she was as famous as he was in Youngstown after that, because she was just such a nice lady and so completely like, how did this come out of this lady?
Almost like a TV character, you know. I mean, if you would do a sitcom now at home with Steve Vaders, and his mom would be like, you know, it would be like a Seinfeld with Jerry, you know, with George's mom and dad and stuff. That would be hilarious. That would be hilarious. Okay, so now. Oh, let's talk about some of the places you played. We didn't even talk about Eddie and JoJos yet. Now, you were like a fixture at Eddie and JoJos. How did you get out there with Eddie Panuti? And
you know, Eddie just was the first one to call. Had to have been 77, because we started the Wizard in 77. Had to been late 77, early 78. And Eddie called. He said, "Why don't you come out and introduce the bands?" It's okay. So, you know, went out, introduced the bands. The place was great. I loved it. He and JoJo were both great. Loved everybody behind the bar. Don was a little bit later, but Don, we know from radio,
right,
was a barmaid then. And, you know, everybody was just cool. And I introduced the band. It was like, well, that was kind of unfulfilling.
Yeah.
You know, what else can I do? So I went home and I started typing up index cards with trivia questions. And
who is Batman?
Yeah, exactly.
And Mr. Mom.
Thank God I didn't know that. And you know, next time I went back, in between, you know, when they took a break, I would do 4 or 5 trivia questions, and it went great. You know, everybody loved it, and then they'd be on back to me. So by the time I'd leave, I'd have written down 4 more questions that I didn't. So now I'm thinking, this. So by the time if I had thought of the goddamn board for Trivial Pursuit, I wouldn't be sitting here.
Right.
Because I have 2 suitcases completely filled with index cards that are just, and I would write on the back what bar I did it in and the date. So I wouldn't repeat them at the same bar.
Yeah.
And
because some people on that trivia, when it comes to winning a prize, they remember it. I get that, like if Brown Steelers parties, you got to change it up all the time because some of these guys, they know.
So it was all, and some of those cards would have, no exaggeration, 40, 50 places that I had done. Not places, times. Like I'd do it again 6 months later at the same bar.
Yeah.
And then I thought, you know what? Why don't I do a quiz? So they can have something to do while they're sitting around. Yeah. You know, so then I started running off quizzes, and they do those, and then in between I'd give the answers, and then somebody would get, and that was great for me because I could run those quizzes. I still have at home. I have like 506 of them. Right. That are just, I mean, every imaginable subject. And so then I was there for 13 years. Actually, it's weird. The 4 places I worked the most, I was at all 4 of them for 13 years. I don't know what it is about 13 years. People go, "Who the hell are you? Get out of here."
No, that says something people don't realize. For you to keep a place going like that, and to keep it happening, and to keep people interested, that's really quite a feat.
It was, you know, it was fun. And in retrospect, I realized it was fun because it was fun for me, because I was feeding off them as much. And I really was listening when they would say, yell up other questions. Yeah. You know, I would keeping track. And, then I went from there to Blue Light. Yeah. Up here on.
In Liberty. Yeah.
Liberty and Bonnie and Clyde's and the Wooden Hinge
Oh, the wooden hinge. I forgot all about the wooden hinge.
And Irish Bob's was another one that was 13 years.
Yeah.
And the Bowery, my God, the Bowery.
Oh, the Bowery. I remember Dan Rivers when he was the DJ in there. I remember when Dan Rivers would DJ at the Bowery. Oh, no. I'm thinking of the wooden keg in Girard at the bottom hill. No, the Bowery in Struthers. I was going to ask you about the Bowery in Struthers, which seems to have come to an unseedy kind of end.
My God, how am I forget Mr. D's?
Oh, Mr. D's.
Oh. Tonight's the night at Mr. D's.
Yeah.
And that was also 13 years. So it was that one, Eddie and JoJo's, Choices, and the one I just said, Blue Light, were 13 years. And then a bunch of 8 years, 7 years. Yeah. But it used to be, for a good number of years, it was Monday at Mr. D's, Tuesday at the Bowery, Wednesday at Irish Bob's, Thursday at the Blue Light, Friday at someplace different. Inner Circle. It was Inner Circle for quite a while. Yeah. And then a wedding on Saturday. So I did 5 nights. I know.
That's how we had a hustle like that, you know?
And the weird part is we were getting paid exactly the same then as they pay now.
Yes.
I mean, really, think about that.
Seriously.
I mean,
it is.
It was $150 a night then. It's still $150 a night.
Yep.
What else?
It has not changed.
Has maintained.
It has not changed.
Of course, it got a lot easier because we used to have to lug the albums and stuff. Now somebody comes in with their phone and plugs it into the speakers.
I remember we'd do that, and we would, you'd have a dolly, and you'd have all those albums in milk cases, and you might make 5, 6 things. And I can remember more than one time, freezing cold night, snow, the dolly tips over, the albums are in a snow-covered parking lot at 2 o'clock in the morning. You're kind of buzzed, you're freezing your ass off, and you're just picking up albums and putting them back in.
Well, let me tell you, I never drank. So it's worse when you're sober.
Yeah. There you go.
You think it's bad because no, it's worse when you know exactly what you just did and exactly how long it's going to take you to fix it.
Yeah, I was going to stumble and fall. Someone's going to drop anyways.
And I forgot Mickey's bar up here. Mickey's had a shelf up high above the where I had my table set. There was a guy. Nobody there had names. To this day, Scooter. I know all their nicknames. I don't know any of their names.
Right.
And the one guy was this big burly guy, and I had my original set of speakers were these, they weren't even Fenders. They were probably 3 feet by 3 feet by 2 feet. They must have weighed 80 pounds. This guy would grab them, pick them up, and lift them back over his head and sit them up on that shelf. Thank you wherever you are, because I never would have played that bar if I had to get those speakers up there. Right. Luckily, he was there every time I ever played, or they, would even put him under the desk.
Yeah, to keep something going like that for that long and still keep people coming out. I mean, there's definitely something to say about that.
Years. And Eddie and JoJo's, because once we did like I said, we did the introducing the bands for a while, probably not a year.
Yeah.
And then we started the only people don't realize there were now everybody realized because there's nothing. But back 10 years ago when everything was hopping. Yeah. We were the first Wednesday night. Nobody opened on Wednesday night.
Right.
And we were the first oldies night. Now Boots was up the street
at Starlight.
Yeah. And he called it oldies night. He would play Rock Around the Clock, and then he would play Top 40 the rest of the night.
Yeah.
I mean, oldies night at our place was nothing past 1969. Right. I remember specifically All Right Now by Free from 1969 was the only thing I would play. Everything else was before that. I mean, it was what really was oldies night. It was the only oldies night, the only Wednesday night. So as a result, a lot of people from Warren, and I mean, a lot of people from Pennsylvania, from
Newcastle, Lowville. That shows you the power of radio advertising, though. Eddie and JoJo's, because you look at it, the place wasn't that big, and everybody knows Eddie and JoJo's. And back at the time, no matter where you heard it on the Wizard, you'd go out there. You hear Thomas John is out there, you'd go out there, and you get out there. It's this little bar out on 422 at the state line, and it's just
flashback to the Henry Paul story when they came back to play there.
Yeah.
When I walked in, he goes, "You realize that bus is bigger than this building," and he was right. The tour bus that they had was longer than the building.
Oh, you mentioned Boots. See, that's another common thread. Okay, we have mentioned Idora Park, check. Hot Day, check. Left End, check. Tomorrow Club, check. Now on to your days with Boots and Bell. You knew we were going to talk about Booter at some point on this show. We would be remiss if we didn't talk about Booter.
Yes. Yeah, Boots was such an enigma. I mean, he was an enigma anyway.
Right.
But he was an enigma to me in particular because I was so completely blown away by his professionalism and what he was doing on the radio. But on the other hand, I could have hit him with a wrench because of the things that he did, because he did the same things. I mean, I always say the people who love Boots the most are the people who had him at YSU, because they had him for 11 weeks. In 11 weeks, his stories could not cross over each other. When you shared an office with him, which Jerry and I did, a room about this size, Jerry and me and Boots, for years, and you hear that, Boots, why do you have that cane? I flipped a car at the Grand Prix. I was bayoneted by a guy when I was coming down in a parachute on D-Day. I don't even remember all of them, but there were at least 5. At least 5. And they were all equally good stories. Right. And if you saw them at YSU, you only got 1. Right. You go, oh my God, remember when the gorilla attack or whatever it was. Yeah. But when you're sitting there just looking at him, like, Boots, you told me before that it was D-Day, and now you're at Watkins Glen, and you flipped this car at Watkins Glen. So, okay, this is the best story. This is the penultimate, or this is the ultimate story. Penultimate would be the last but one. Boots knew everything. He always knew everything.
That's the thing that got with Boots, is because he did know stuff.
Exactly.
I mean, the guy was so smart, he could tell you something and it would be like, oh, okay, because he had the facts to back it up.
And okay, you just
at least I thought
you led into this perfectly.
Okay.
So I had an agouti. An agouti is a South African rat. It's about that long and that tall.
An agouti.
It's agouti.
Where'd you get an agouti?
At Cornersburg Pet Shop.
They actually sell these things.
Another story. I was writing commercials for Cornersburg Pet Shop. But back in those days, you actually went to the place where you wrote commercials. So a guy's name was Les. Why do I remember that? And I can't remember Michael Keaton. So anyway, we went in there and he had this agouti following him around. And it was the coolest animal. Fred, it was about that long. When it ate, it would sit up on its hind legs and you'd give it an apple and it would go, and it would take all the peelings off and the peelings would fly and then it would stop. It would look around and then it would eat the apple. When it walked, it was a rat body, but the legs were that long. So imagine a rat walking along on
like cat legs or
on a foot above the ground. It looks like a horror movie. Exactly what it looks like.
What'd you name the agouti?
Rudy.
Rudy Agouti.
So
okay.
I
think I graduated Rudy Agouti.
So I think
he got blown up when they burned his bar down over in the north side. So Rudy Agouti.
You have no idea how prophetic you have been. So I'm like, I can't believe you said that.
Okay.
So I buy this agouti. It's going to be the coolest thing ever. It's going to be the coolest. I was living with Steve Miller on
another character right there.
I was living with Nicky Rollins.
Love Steve Miller.
In the house up here on Fairgreen. And I bring this thing. It was his house. He was renting me a room. And at his funeral, his mother said, "You're the guy with the rat, aren't you?" So maybe it wasn't the most popular decision at the time, but I had this agouti. Well, what he had failed to tell me was they have no affection for human beings whatsoever. So you couldn't pet him, you couldn't touch him. He would lay under the bed, and I would lay on the bed, and I could reach my hand back and put my fingernails across his back and just scratch him a little bit, and he would let me do that. Anything else, he would freak out.
Yeah.
So finally, one morning I woke up to go to work, and the sun is directly above. What the hell? It was noon. Because my alarm clock didn't go off, because Rudy had gone around and had eaten through every single electric cord in my bedroom. So now I'm getting a little pissed at Rudy. This is wearing a little thin. So finally I decided it was Oscar night. I decided, okay, Rudy, I'm going to give you one more chance. I had a big cage that I got for him. So I got all new hay, spread out the hay, put Rudy in the cage. I know I'm going to spend the next 5 hours watching the Oscars, because I used to do that. And so that's it. I'm going to touch you, Rudy, and you're going to let me touch you. Tonight's the night. So I best supporting actor. I put my hand on the side of the thing. Fine. Cinematography, I put my hand inside, and he's just looking at me. He's eating this apple, and he's just looking at me. Well, finally he gets to the point where I move an inch too close, and he goes crazy. His feet start spinning like Roadrunner, and all the shit goes all over out of and everything, and I was so pissed. And I thought, that's it. Hell with you.
Yeah, you're out.
So the next day, I took him back to Cornersburg Pet Shop.
And they say, no returns.
No, they took him back.
Okay.
And a week later,
It burnt down?
It burned to the ground.
Are you shitting me?
And Rudy died. I thought sure you somehow.
Are you kidding me?
I thought sure you must have somehow heard the story.
No.
A week later, Burnsburg Pet Shop.
Oh my God.
I have been guilty.
That's weird.
I have felt guilty for that for the last 35 years.
And I bring this up just out of the clear blue because we were joking about bars and the mob and
burned down.
Oh.
And one time I went to.
Okay. Oh, getting back to Boots now. Yeah, Boots with the agouti because
So,
he knows.
anyway.
He knows.
Right. So Jerry and I know I have an agouti. So Boots is over at his desk with his back to us like he always was.
Yeah.
And Jerry says, "How's Rudy?" I said, "Oh, Rudy's great." This is early on. I said, "He's so cool, and he's got really long legs, and he's so cool." And finally, Boots finally turns around and goes, "Who's this Rudy?" And we're like, "All right." We said, "It's an agouti," and he goes, "Oh, South African rat about this long." We're just like, "Oh my God!" So anyway, that was the Boots that leads to this. Boots has been telling us for weeks that he's going to Walter Reed Hospital to have shrapnel removed from his head because of D-Day. Okay. So he's going to Walter Reed Hospital. He started this 2 months before. It's coming. You know what? I'm going to go in a troop transport. No, Tom. Other guys might be freaked out by that because they don't have seats and no seat belts. But you just sit on them. But I'm used to it. It's fine. It's going to be fine. So I'm going to Walter Reed Hospital. I'm going to have the shrapnel removed from my head. Everything's fine.
I'm going to get whittled on.
I'll be going for about a week. Okay. So comes time for the morning. He says, "Goodbye, everyone. I'm going to Walter Reed Hospital." He leaves. Phone 5 minutes later rings. "This is the Tony Rich Hair Salon in Cleveland. We're calling to verify Mr. Bell's appointment." So you can imagine.
Oh, busted.
I'm like beside myself. This is like Easter, Christmas, my birthday. Finally, we got him.
Yeah.
So I was gone for a week. So everybody knew that I was the one, because I was still really young then. I'd only been there a couple of years. So they knew it bothered me more than it bothered them because they were used to it. So they said, "Okay, TJ, it's coming. It's coming."
Yeah.
Oh my God, I can't wait. So we wait. A week later, the Volkswagen, the booter scooter, pulls in. He gets out, his head's all bandaged. And we all come running out to meet him because
Hey, are you okay, dude?
He was exactly.
This is shrapnel out?
He was beloved. So we were all waiting for him. And so he comes in, and exactly, it was like you were there. And so, "Oh, Boots, how is it? Oh, how do you feel?" And they were there. Finally, I said, "Oh, Boots, by the way, Tony Rich Hair Salon called the morning you left to verify your appointment." Fred, it wasn't a tenth of a second. He said, "Damn it, I forgot to cancel that appointment."
Didn't miss a beat.
And that was it. I just shriveled up like George in the swimming pool, and I skulked back to my office, and I think I stayed there for a week because it was over. There was no way. I was never going to get that opportunity again. And damn if he didn't do it to me again. Oh. Damn, I forgot to cancel that appointment. And then you could, everything was so dramatic. You could see his face. Yeah. And then he was like, I'll have to call them to make sure. I hope they didn't charge me. So
I'm not paying for that one.
And the worst thing is, to this day, I don't know that maybe he did not cancel the Tony Rich. Maybe he did go to Walter Reed. I doubt it. But you never know for sure.
Yeah, because he always had a story, man.
Oh my God, nothing but stories.
He always had something. But you know what? That was the difference, though. There was a difference between Ross Bellino and Boots Bell. Oh, yeah. You know what I mean? Because Boots Bell, it's a difference between Vincent Veneer and Ellis Cooper. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's two different things.
And you got 40 seconds for another story?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
This is the other ultimate Boots story. This was 1980 Olympics, Lake Placid. And we all watched the Olympics because that's what you do.
Yeah.
So next morning, 8:45 in the morning, we're sitting in the office, and some other people had come in to talk to Jerry and I, and Boots was sitting there where he always does, always with his back to us.
Yeah.
So the night before, when they went to do the national anthem, something else played for like 3 notes. And then it stopped, and then the national anthem started. So being radio geeks, we're all like, "Well, man, did you hear what happened? Did you? Oh my God, did you see the mistake they made?" All of a sudden, Boots says, "I tried to tell him." And the whole place just got silent, like a dog got hit by a car. It was just, and you waited. And he turned around and he goes, well, you know, I worked for Steve Allen, which I guess he did that part too. I think he did work on the crew for Steve Allen early in TV when he was in Rochester.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I used to work with Steve Allen, so I still have an ID that I can get into any of these network things. Oh, the Olympics? The control room? He said, I saw when that guy grabbed that card, it was the wrong card, and I went to tell him, and it was too late. And again, I shriveled up a lot when I was working there. Your whole body just shrivels in on itself. And you go, even though it's 9 a.m, that happened at midnight the previous night in Lake Placid. There's still, there's no way I'm ever going to substantively prove that he wasn't there. The second that happened, of course, I knew I could leave. So I went out and got in my sports car and drove back home, and it took me 3 hours, and I slept for 3 hours, and here I am. Which, it
was always that. I mean, it was a constant flow of that. It was a constant flow. And it was just like, oh man, and you just laugh and laugh and laugh, but what a character!
And then
man.
the ultimate, from the grave, was when Boots died, and his obituary was in the paper, and he was 60. And you go, what? I mean, I didn't believe that he was bayoneted coming down in a parachute on D-Day, only because I thought, well, he wouldn't have been in a parachute and nobody would have parachuted. I never thought that he could not possibly have been there at all.
I know. Oh, there was a lot. I remember his newsman with us at WNIO at the time, Tom Morris, when the obituary appeared in the paper, he was just crestfallen, and he's going, these dirty son of a bitches at the Vindicator, I can't believe what they did to this man. Look at this. They didn't even mention this and this. And I'm just like, I think that might have been one of them. They didn't even mention the Battle of the Bulge. And I was like, oh.
Oh my God.
But he was such a character. I loved working with him every day. And look, here we are. He's been gone now. I can't even imagine. He would have been, 90 here coming up?
He was 60. That was
19. Yeah, he died in 93. He was 60 in 93.
So that's 20 years ago.
That's longer than 20.
Well, 93 was...
93, 03, 13, and 7, 27.
Michael Keaton.
Yeah. Hey, I knew Michael Keaton was Batman. See, I don't blame that on old age when I get to that point. I blame it because I went to Wilson High School. I just blame it on my Wilson High School city education is why I can't figure that kind of stuff out. Yeah, so 20 is 60 and 23. 83? 83, I think.
No, you're right. Not 20 years, just 30 years. 93.
He would have been 93.
93.
Wow. Could you imagine Boots at 93?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I definitely can.
He would still look like he does now. He would have never changed. Yeah. He looked like he would look like he was now. Oh yeah, he always had some great stories though. It was always.
And there are so many stories. And the killer is, I've told those stories. I've told them to 4 different documentary filmmakers. None of the movies have ever come out. I don't know if it's because of those stories or what.
I know. We're waiting on them.
Well, you were in the last one.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I think the problem with that was everybody had so many stories, and they interviewed so many people that had stories. I'm sitting there going, it's going to take forever to. What are you going to do this? How are we going to edit this down into an hour?
Well, now we got Netflix. They should make it a miniseries.
Yeah, we'll make the Boots miniseries. Maybe have 3 different people, 4 different people at a time,
and have Ed O'Neill host it.
Oh, there we go.
Which he would do in a second because he idolizes Boots.
Oh, yeah. I was the one that picked that up when they did that thing on Modern Family about Booker Bell. I'm watching this and they're going, and it goes, Booker Bell, I loved you in Youngstown and all this stuff. And they, and it's Phil Henry playing, Booker Bell. And I was like, I can't believe I'm watching this. I called up his son, Chris. I go, Chris, did you watch the show Modern Family? No, why? I go, you're not going to believe this.
Wait a minute. Phil Henry, the guy that did the talk show by himself, is the guy that played that guy in Modern Family? I didn't know that.
Yeah. It was Phil Henry that played Booker Bell. And, Yeah, that would be something. But boy, what a character, man. I mean, I had so many great stories with him and so many good times, and it was just and here it is. Like, he's been gone all these years, and we still talk about him every day.
Well, you know what? I mean, to talk about there's nobody like him. It's exactly the case. There's nobody like him.
No,
nobody.
One of a kind. Look, voice, attitude. It was just everything about that guy was just so original, including every story that he ever told. But yeah, I got him on the Youngstown Mount Rushmore, you know.
Oh, God, yes.
Who would you put there?
Maybe by himself.
Yeah. You got Boots, Trafficant, maybe Trestle, Boom Boom. Ed O'Neill. You know, maybe somebody else, but
quick.
That would be like the 5, and the Tomorrow Club. It would be like on the facade of the Tomorrow Club. Yeah, you would have it over the facade of the Tomorrow Club, and the Idor Park sign. It would be like the Idor Park sign would be there, and that would be, here we are. Yeah, and we'll put the Wizard on there somewhere too, you know, and a WHOT hotspot, and then we'd be good to go. Yeah, I think we got everything covered.
Hotspots.
Oh, but that had to be fun too for you. You know, it was like, that was your first radio job. You got in with the HOT and were able to go that whole distance.
How lucky I was. I mean, it was, you know, I started out writing commercials, did that for 5 years, and then we started the Wizard. And when it ended, I was still going to do. I never stopped doing continuity,
right?
So I was still going to do that. So I remember going into the boss and saying, you know what? George Berry had just died, and George, another name, was forever and ever, ever on the right side. And he was like he kind of dealt with charities and stuff, but not really.
Yeah.
I mean, really, nobody did. So I went in and made that pitch to the boss. I said, you know what? Nobody talks to charities. Nobody talks to, you know, let's make a promotions director.
Yeah.
The first one in Youngstown on radio. They had him on TV, and he said, okay. He was a tough guy to work with.
Yeah.
He said, okay, fine. So, you know, that's when it started, and then we had the ridiculous stuff that we did through the years. We gave away a car one time. AC and Kelly drove it to Chicago, and you had to predict how many miles they would go before they ran out of gas.
Oh, I remember that.
And
I remember
hundreds
that.
and hundreds of people. And then what you forgot was, now you got to sort them, and there's no computers.
Yeah.
So I spent hours.
That's back in the day. To enter a contest, you would have to go get a postcard, put a stamp on it, or get a pre-stamp, put your name, address, and phone number, put your guess on there, and drop it in the mailbox, and then we would just get these boxes of postcards.
And then you had to separate them all by miles.
Yeah.
So, and then they were going to drive there, and they were going to call when they ran out of gas, and then we would have a winner, and then I was going to fly out to meet them with the winner, and then they were going to fly back with the winner, and I was going to drive the car back. So it seemed like a great idea. Yeah. Well, I get a panic phone call from AC. He says, now you got people who might not know, AC is African American, Kelly is tall blonde, and this was 1980, whatever. Okay. So, you know, please don't tell me I'm a racist. It's a story, okay? Yeah. And these things, anyway, I get a call from Ace who says, okay, TJ, we're in Skokie. He goes, we're going to run out of gas. I do not want to run out of gas in Skokie with this blonde sitting next to me.
Yeah.
And he was right. You know, I'm sorry. In Skokie at that time, that was not a good idea.
Right.
Because the point was you had to go straight in a straight line.
Yeah.
That was. And I said, you know what difference does it make? It's going to be mileage anyway.
Right.
So turn around and go to some place you think is safe. And just don't stop. Keep driving until it runs out. So they did. They drove around until they finally ran out of gas, and they called. And after that, it worked great. It flew the guy there. And did you ever see the movie with Dustin Hoffman where he sits out on the ledge in the Drake Hotel? And what was it called? Hero. Yeah. That was my room. And that was the hotel we stayed in. And we stayed in the hotel, and the next morning they flew back, and I got in the car, and then I realized I had to drive back from Chicago by myself. I was 90% asleep. And this was, I left at 7 a.m. So it wasn't that it was dark. I was just like, how long can you just keep driving by yourself? I remember I had to pull over in a truck stop and go to sleep in the car. Oh, man. 2 hours later.
There you are, promotions director. You happy? Happy you got it?
And I forget what the car was. It was like whatever it wasn't worth the big deal. At least they actually won it. It wasn't when we went into that two-year lease thing. God, I hated that one.
Oh, that was messed up.
Leases. Okay, you get a 2-year lease. You don't get to pick the color. You have to keep your original car because you're going to go back in 2 years. So you have to keep up the insurance.
And if it gets dented, you're paying for it.
Congratulations.
I always love that. Hey, it's already time for us to wrap up, man. Boy, 2 hours just buzzed right by.
Oh, my God.
You know, TJ, I miss working with you. You know, I probably worked with you longer than all those other places that you were at or close to it. But man, it's great talking to you. And I know everybody's happy to hear you and see what you're up to here these days. And man, it's just so many great memories with the Wizard. And like I say, I think we touched on all the requirements that we have to talk about on this show. So we got it all done. But thanks for coming out, man. It's been a blast. And we'll have to have you on again sometime. You know, we'll talk movies. If you can remember Michael Keaton. Just bring a box of trivia. Maybe we'll do a trivia challenge or something.
Reach in that box, pull it out, and give things away.
Right. Well, TJ, thanks for taking some time with us, man. Thomas John, ladies and gentlemen, great time. And we just want to thank you for tuning in here today. We'll see you Thursday. TJ, awesome time, man.
Thanks, Freddie.
Thank you for listening to this show on Youngstown Studio. If you like our programming, we invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow our Facebook page, or subscribe to your favorite podcast platform like iTunes or Spotify. This is original Youngstown content, and we would appreciate you sharing the videos and the word about us. Thank you.
What's causing all this? Woo!
Good scooter on the phone, you